Good evening and welcome to the Bellevue City Council meeting for November 26, 2018. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could please all rise and please remain standing for the invocation by Pastor David Leidick, Midlands Bible Baptist Church, 2407 Chandler Road East. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Thank you again, Madam Mayor and council members, for the privilege. And I think this is an important, vitally important practice, and I commend you for it. Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we're a grateful people, just having come through the national holiday in which we recognize your goodness to us as a people. And Lord, we're blessed, as the scripture says, blessed is that nation whose God is the Lord. And you have been the God of this nation since our founding, and we praise you for your goodness to us. But Lord, at the same time, we're a needy people. And so we come to you tonight in our need, asking you to impart wisdom and counsel and understanding. And Lord, again, I thank you for this body. I pray your blessing upon them. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for our mayor. She's just now coming to the close of her time of service, and we're a grateful people for her service and for her faithfulness to us as a people. Lord, I pray your continued blessings upon her, and then as well for the new incoming mayor. And Lord, we just ask again that you'd bless tonight, bless all that's said and done, and through all of it, Lord, may we be mindful again of your goodness to us, and may you get the glory and the praise for it. And we'll thank you and praise you for it even now in the name of your precious Son and our dear Savior, the Lord Jesus. Amen. God bless you.
Thank you, Pastor Leidick. Item number 3, roll call, please.
Mr. Hanson. Here. Mr. Cook.
Here.
Mr. Shannon.
Here.
Mr. Preister.
Here.
Mr. Burns.
Here.
Mr. Modry.
Here.
Item 4, this meeting will be conducted according to the Open Meetings Act, which is posted in the entrance to the council. Item 5, approval of agenda, consent agenda, claims, and advisory committee reports.
Item 5A is the approval of the agenda.
Madam Mayor, I would move to approve the agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
A
Madam
motion and
Mayor.
a second. Mr. Shannon.
I would move to amend the agenda.
Second.
Right, let me get it in. All right. I would move that we move item 10 Delta in front of item 8A. It's a related item that needs to go first. And so 10D will become 8A and 8A will become 8B, which is seconded.
You have a second by Mr. Preister. Discussion or questions?
Yes.
Mr. Mangiamelli.
Mr. Shannon, then item 8B will become 8C. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Does that work for you, Sabrina?
Yeah, we were trying to fix a different problem, so.
Are there any other questions, comments?
No motion was Shannon.
We are voting on the amendment to the agenda. Please vote. Sabrina, are you ready for their vote?
No, we gotta get the amendment in there. For some reason, we had an extra member on the council, so. Right here. Amend motion. Move,
I missed 8B.
but we're amending it to move 10D to before 8A.
Did it open so you could vote yet?
No. Can you just take a roll call vote?
All right, just.
There we go.
Did it go away?
This motion is on null.
This is amend.
Thank you, Siddiq.
Is it spinning? Mr. Hanson and Mr. Cook is still spinning.
Vote on no.
Have Mr. Hanson and Mr. Cook both voted?
What's this for?
Just the amendment.
The amendment.
Oh.
They're not showing.
Do it again.
Do we have to go?
No, just hit open again.
Can we ask for a roll call vote?
For some reason, it's not saving the vote, so we will do a roll call vote.
It just came up for the amendment.
Okay. That's the one I had again, because you don't have to do it again. Let's see if it goes this time. Last
Okay.
time it didn't.
It doesn't come over on my side at all.
Okay. They're over.
All voted yes.
Thank you.
The agenda.
As amended.
Are you ready for the next vote for the agenda as amended?
I know.
You can, 3 times.
It's got
It, whatever, it's kind of
Take a
messed
roll
up,
call
so
vote.
we'll just do a roll call. Mr. Hanson? Yes. Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Preister?
Yes.
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Mr. Modry?
Yes.
All voted yes.
Thank you.
Item 5B is the approval of the consent agenda. City Council considers these items to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. Unless a city council member or the mayor requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda, in which case it'll be placed in its normal sequence on the agenda. Item 5B1 is approval of the minutes from the November 13, 2018 City Council meeting. Item 5B2, acknowledge receipt of the minutes from the November 15, 2018 Planning Commission meeting. Item 5B3, approval of claims. Item 5B4, approval of the appointment of Kathy Kimball to the Civil Service Commission to fill an unexpired term until May 2022. Item 5, oops.
B5.
I jumped down to 8. Give me a second.
Yeah.
I'm going to read it off the written copy. Let's see. Item 5B5 is approval of the reappointment of June Etheridge to the Bellevue Historical Society. And item 5B6 is a LB 840 plan update. Madam Mayor, council members, are there any of these items you have removed from consent status?
Mr. Shannon?
I would remove 5B4.
So we'll put that where?
Put that in current business, so it'd be item 13E.
Mr. Preister?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the consent agenda as just modified.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Mr. Burns. Discussion or questions? See none. Please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. Item 6, special presentations, none. Item 7, liquor license.
7A is Winston's Liquor and Tobacco LLC, doing business as Winston Liquor and Tobacco. Application for a Class D liquor license to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits off sale only, and for Mary Bell as manager of the license.
Is there anyone here to represent this item? I see none. I'll go ahead and open for public hearing on this item. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please do so at this time. See none. I'll close the public hearing on this item. Wishes of the council. Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion that we recommend approval to the Nebraska Liquor Control Commission on Winston's Liquor and Tobacco LLC, doing business as Winston Liquor and Tobacco, application for a Class D liquor license to sell beer, wine, distilled spirits, off sale only, and for Maria Bell as manager of the license.
Second by Mr. Hanson. Discussion, questions? Mr. Modry.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'll be abstaining from voting on this item for religious and personal reasons.
See no other discussion or items, please vote.
Five yes votes, one abstention.
Thank you. Item 8, ordinance for adoption, third reading.
We're
8A.
We
We're
need to
moving,
move the thing yet.
Okay. Item 10D, which is now going to be 8A, is ordinance number 3924, amending sections 5.20 and 5.21 of the Bellevue zoning ordinance regarding permitted uses in the BN and BNH zoning districts. The application is the city of Bellevue. I'll read the title of the ordinance. Is an ordinance to amend sections 5.20 and 5.21 of ordinance number 3619, Bellevue zoning ordinance relating to permitted uses in the BN Neighborhood Business District and BNH Heavy Neighborhood Business District, to repeal such sections as heretofore existing, to provide an effective date of the ordinance, and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Mr. Sullivan.
The reason why I asked that this gets put in front of 8A is in the event whether you approve the 8A application, at looking at this, office use was not in the BN and BNH zoning districts. It seemed appropriate. It went to Planning Commission. Planning Commission found it to be appropriate. But we are trying to approve a development agreement under 8A that would be in conflict if we didn't pass this ordinance. So what I would be asking the council to do tonight is to waive 3 readings, have the public hearing, and vote on 10A, which then would make the use under the development agreement consistent with the zoning in that area.
So we've had the reading of that. Now do we need a motion?
We need a motion to waive.
For 2 readings of the public hearing tonight. Mr. Shannon.
I'll make the motion to waive the 3 readings and hold a public hearing and vote on this item tonight.
On ordinance number 3924.
On ordinance number 3924.
Second.
Second by Mr. Preister. Discussion, questions, Mr. Cook.
I just got a quick question. What is the urgency here? 10D, we did not, if someone just looked at this, they saw it as first reading. Normally we put in there that they want to waive the statutory readings. I guess I'd like to know what would be held up or stopped if at our next meeting we would take action on this.
Yeah,
Mr. Sullivan.
let me take it. Okay.
Mr. Shannon.
In discussions with Mr. Rossini today, he's got an impatient landlord that where he's at, and he wants to know if he can lease his space out or what's going on. And we're holding up the sale of 2 properties, the sale here and the sale of the property that the people are buying that are moving out of the house. And so there's all kinds of moving pieces here, and that's kind of the urgency, is that his commercial lease is just about up, and we've got to get him moved or let him know he's got to pick another direction.
Mr. Sullivan?
I would tell you, typically on zoning matters, I would be real hesitant to waive the public hearing, but this is a minor amendment that we're making that's been recommended by both the planning department as well as the planning commission. It's just a small change, and I don't think in any sense a controversial change. It's just a small change to add to a permitted use that I think was more an oversight or omission than it was anything else that it wasn't in there.
So we have a motion and a second. No other questions or discussion, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. So I'll open for public hearing now on ordinance number 3924. Mr. Mangiamelli.
Mr. Sullivan, would it be appropriate for us to bring up ordinance number 3916, since they're related, to have the public hearing once?
They really need to be separate anyway,
Okay.
so.
All right.
So we'll do 3924. If there's anyone that would like to speak on this item, please do so at this time. See none, I'll close the public hearing. We need a motion.
Okay, I'll take it.
Mr. Shannon.
I would move to approve ordinance 3924.
Second.
A motion and a second by Mr. Modry. Discussion or question, Mr. Shannon?
Just for clarification, the only thing we're doing at this point is approving the change to add office use to BN and BNH. We're not approving the entire package for Matt Rossini right now. So that's the only thing on the vote right now.
Are you ready for their vote? Please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you.
Okay, then the next item would be item 8D, which is ordinance number 3916, rezoning tax lot 1, except right-of-way in section 7, township 13 north, range 13 east of the 6 p.m. Sarpy County, Nebraska, from AG to BN for the purpose of a business office. The applicant is Matt Ricchini. Location is 4803 Cape Hart Road.
Mayor.
Mr. Shannon?
Mayor, I would move to approve ordinance 3916 without restriction, giving Matt Rossini BN zoning with no agreements, no restrictions. Mr. Moudry?
Mr. Sullivan?
Let me just clarify, the way the ordinance is written now, except for the section that I have as a development agreement, it would take you to do an amendment. Right now, the way it's written will not require you to do anything to it. In other words, that the documents that I hand out to you today that is redline, that requires a development agreement, so that would be amendment to the motion. So you simply can just request that the ordinance be passed as is right now, and then we can see what happens with the amendment.
All right. I'll move to approve the ordinance as written.
Second.
This motion by Shannon, second by Mr. Modry. Discussion or questions? Mr. Sullivan?
In front of all of you, I have put an ordinance, both in red line and finished form, that adds a new section 3 and moves the old section 3 to section 4. And it has a provision that says this ordinance shall be void in the event a development agreement approved of even date, meaning today, with the applicant or an entity owned by the applicant and the city is not executed within 30 days of this agreement. So I would tell you that administratively, or administration is recommending that you make a motion to amend to add this section to the ordinance.
Mr. Shannon.
For discussion purposes, I'd like to leave it how it is till we can kind of come to a consensus and decide how we're going to move this forward. I do have a question for Jeff, or probably Chris, actually. Right now, on this property, we have a house.
Yes,
That house has a driveway.
yes.
That driveway will be grandfathered if anything changes in that neighborhood, would it not?
Jeff, you can correct, if improvements are done to the intersection of 48th Street and Capehart Road, there are such improvements that would warrant that driveway going away. And that may happen.
It may warrant it, but the driveway's still grandfathered. There would have to be agreements made at that point to move it and pay for a new road or a new access or something. But barring any of those, barring any ifs, right now that driveway will be grandfathered going forward.
Currently, yes.
But it could change in the future. There is an access easement through the Falcon Point neighborhood to this property that it can be utilized if that driveway,
It could be.
yes.
Again,
The way it's sitting currently, it'll remain that way.
okay. That's the
That's the
point I was
question, I
getting at.
believe, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just trying to establish the fact that everything we've been talking about for weeks here is moot because the driveway gets to stay. And we don't need to do anything. The development agreement as it exists is extremely unfair to a business owner to ask him to come in here and spend $40,000 putting in a walking trail, to come in and agree that if in the future X, Y, and Z happens, that we're going to require him to build a road, that he's been told he would be provided if those things happen in the future, that his zoning could be taken away at any point if we get mad at him. Yeah, this was an extremely unfair agreement, and I'm just saying that you wouldn't buy a piece of property with all of those conditions attached to it, and neither would Mr. Rossini. And so I think in the name of getting this economic development moving forward, we all agree this is a good match for the neighborhood. This is a good use for the property. I would be in favor of just giving him BN, and we'll let the future take care of itself. And if these three ifs happen 40 years from now, we'll deal with it at that point. But right now, this is a good use of it for the foreseeable future. Mr. Rossini has given us assurances that this is all he wants to do. He's willing to make the ADA improvements, and I see no reason to hold him up any further.
Chris, did you want to say anything?
I just want to clarify, the driveway in its current condition can stay the way it is. At such time as there are improvements to the intersection, he may lose that driveway. It's not grandfathered forever.
Okay.
Mr. Hanson.
Are we talking about the development agreement right now, or are we on a different issue? I mean, you were talking about the development agreement?
Well, indirectly, you are only from the standpoint of it administratively from the planning department, they're requesting that you make an amendment to the ordinance that requires a development agreement. Assuming that you did that and it passed, then we would move on to the development agreement and discuss some of the issues that are within the development agreement, because you may want to make amendments to that as well if you move forward. I think to try to understand some of the issues, that driveway is there, but that driveway is going to have to be modified because once you change from a residential use to a commercial use, all these ADA requirements then kick in. And so how that sits is a different issue. Secondly, if we do not put in the walking trail, you are going to have a disconnected walking trail between at 48th Street. It will stop at south of Ricchini's property, and there will be a break in that trail until you get up to Capehart, where it begins again and heads east. We are making a developer develop and put in an 8-foot walking trail, And I think from a planning perspective, we see that as the same thing with the Ricchini property being developed as a commercial property. And that's why that requirement is in there. Secondly, some of these items that are required to be done, you can say we have 3 ifs or buts that are going to happen in the future. Those ifs and buts are going to cost us 2 to 3 times more on a condemnation level if it is commercial property as opposed to it remaining zoned as it is in its current zoning. So from the standpoint of the planning department, we are trying to give the applicant as much room as we possibly can to do what they want to do, understanding from our perspective that a trail needs to be put in, as well as if that property ultimately gets condemned, which I think it probably will on 48th Street anyway, there might be a way to work through it, that it is going to cost us and or the county and those SIDs around there significantly more money because it's now commercial instead of its current zoning. I mean, that house sits in a funny spot. It's a weird way that's done that, and I think you could have developed that corner more as a commercial use had there been a bigger piece there. But now it's this weird little anomaly, so we're trying to take care of that weird little anomaly. But there are certain conditions that if we outright transfer that type of use, which they've already determined isn't the greatest use for that small parcel, you're going to pay for it when you go to condemnation later. That intersection, and this is personal, but that intersection is already packed in the morning, and that is only at about maybe a 1/5 or 1/10 of what its capacity is going to be in 10 years.
Mr. Cook.
Pat, I would agree with your last comment. I've already had complaints on that intersection. There's already been calls for that place they'd love to see a traffic light there. I'm not following everything that's going on. I apologize. I know that when we did 10D, that was just amending and putting the BN and BHN. And right now we're on 9B, and that's just trying to rezone this lot.
Correct.
Or I'm sorry, 8B. Or 8B, trying to rezone this lot. Are we, but 8B1 is going to be the approval of the development agreement. Is that what Mr. Shannon is trying to make some changes to now? Or I am not seeing this except today.
Okay, so 10A that we just approved, we would ask you to approve that whether
Right, 10D,
up or not.
10D, we would have
10D,
approved it.
correct, no matter what, because that's an appropriate use in those zoning districts, okay? We had discussed earlier when this, I think, came up to public hearing about developing or putting together a development agreement that would still allow Mr. Ricchini to use the property. All I'm doing is having the ordinance amended to reference the development agreement, because outside of putting that reference in there, if you pass the ordinance as is, then all uses, permitted uses as well as special uses or conditional uses would be a proper use on that property. And there are significantly other uses that create higher volume that we would not want to be used on that property.
So we don't know if we approve 8B, Mr. Ricchini may not like 8B1, and what have we accomplished?
We may not have accomplished anything, but simply put, if you pass the ordinance as it is, that corner can be used for anything in the BN zoning.
And what you're saying is, on what we were given right before this meeting, you have put in a section in here, and you're saying you want ordinance 39, what your recommendation is ordinance number 3916 needs to be approved as what we got today.
Correct.
It's not what we had on our original agenda, so is there an amendment needed to be made, or do we just say 3916 approve or not?
No, that's why I've given that to you, so you know what to make as a motion for an amendment to that ordinance.
And what I've proposed and what Jim has seconded is that we don't want the development agreement. We're recommending that we just give him BN.
But you're talking about 8B1.
No, we're talking about 8B.
It would be this because it,
We're
reference to it.
advocating passing this without putting the change in and without adding the development agreement.
okay.
That's what's on the table right now.
So the motion was made to approve ordinance 3916
As
Correct.
is.
As shown in your packet.
not this.
That's correct.
And has there been an amendment motion made for this?
Not at this time.
Okay. Is it appropriate to make it?
Yes.
Are we done with
Oh,
public input or?
Well, yeah, normally we do that after a motion is made, but sure.
Well, then I will make a motion that we amend it as presented to us with a section, how do you want me to say this?
You can just say, adding section 3, this ordinance shall be void in the event that the development agreement approved of even date with the applicant or entity owned by the applicant and the city is not executed within 30 days of this agreement.
I'll make the amendment to what Mr. Sullivan said. And again, I think Mr. Sullivan is presenting a case that is for the protection of the city in the long term and in the future. So I make that amendment.
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Preister. Are there any discussion, questions? Shannon?
I would ask that we reopen the public hearing and that way we can talk to Matt and let him address this and what he's learned since the last council meeting about the costs involved and what's being asked of him. So I will make the motion to open for public hearing.
So we have a motion to open public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Modry. Discussion or questions? Sabrina, do you have that ready to vote? It's just the public hearing.
We can do it as a voice vote.
Can we do it as a voice vote?
Sure. Mr. Hanson? Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Preister?
Yes.
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Mr. Modry?
Yes.
All voted yes.
Thank you. I'll now open for public hearing on ordinance number 3916. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this item?
That means you get to come up whether you wanted to or not.
And state your name and address, please.
My name is Matt Ricchini.
Thank you.
2211 Cape Art Road, Suite 106. I am the applicant for the rezoning ordinance number 3916. Okay. Madam Mayor, City Council members, City Administrator, let's see, we call this a development agreement, is something that was sent to me last week, and in looking over it, there's an awful lot of, it sounds very legal speak, and I'm sure it was written with the intentions of protecting the city. There are some things in it that says, for example, that in the event that I am being prejudiced or biased against anybody, that I'm going to potentially make part of the development agreement give the city the right to reverse the zoning change. And some of what I do know is that there are other laws and rules of our city and our state and our country that prevent me from being biased and acting in prejudice. I had mentioned to the city attorney that I felt like that wasn't an appropriate place for the development agreement. I had some concern to the development agreement stating that if I am in default on any part of the 11 sections, that the city has the right to take and reverse the zoning back to AG. I look at that and say that could happen at any point in the future. I could have tens of thousands of dollars wrapped up in this, and certainly that may be motivation to keep on the straight and narrow, but I feel like that it's almost punitive. It's almost damaging to the development agreement. The development agreement also indicates that there's wording that says if the easement lot or the easement road has to be paved, that I would assume the cost of that. That is excessive and kind of counterproductive to what I'm trying to do. I put an offer in to buy this property from the current owners with the intentions of getting it rezoned. I figured, yep, I could probably afford the cost of making it ADA compliant, putting a parking lot in place, putting a ramp in place so anybody in a wheelchair could make it in, putting a handicap accessible bathroom and other meeting places for handicapped people, all within a reasonable budget for a small business owner. But when it comes down to paving a 240-foot road, I know even our city and county are dealing with road projects because they're cost prohibitive and have been delayed for a long time. I don't want to subject myself to an ordinance that says I have to do it and I have to do it in a certain period of time. So as a person who wants to be a good citizen and work with the city, I also have to take into account that, one, I don't know if the city, the county, plan on doing any development of that road. But at the same time, I have to say, I would prefer that some of that language be reworked. I don't want to have a development agreement that has legislation on other areas like, prejudice or bias. I consider myself a moral and ethical person. I do business the way I need to do business and true to myself and to our community. So I feel like there's certain areas of this development agreement that are maybe appropriate if I were a land developer. I'm just asking for a rezoning so that I can run the business. That's what my attempts to do are.
Mayor.
Mr. Shannon.
Matt? Can you talk to the walking trail issue and what you've learned about what's going to be involved on this particular property and putting that walking trail in?
Yeah, I had some architects look at that. Based upon the relative guideline of what I was told, it needs to be 8 foot wide and it needs to run the length of the lot along 48th Street. One, with the easements, it would run smack dab into a pole. There is a pole, there's a power line there, a power pole, and it would run into that. At 8 foot wide and 190 feet, it's going to cost me somewhere in the neighborhood of $40,000, as well as installing a 4-level wall. And
are we talking about a retaining wall?
A retaining wall.
Okay.
Because of the way the slope of the land is, and putting an 8 foot wide bike path into that. So,
and if you spent that $40,000 and they then widened 48th Street, you'd end up doing it a second time.
Respectfully, I wouldn't do it a second time. I'd prefer not to do it the first time. But if I spent $40,000, I would probably powerlessly insist that it not be torn out. But it would be my request to say, I just put $40,000 into a retaining wall and a bike path, which, at this point, if I pour the bike path, it's going to lead to nowhere because the developer hasn't put a bike path in yet. I had asked in writing to the city attorney that if that can be coordinated, because the development agreement says I will not get an occupancy certificate until that is poured. And I'm like going, that really doesn't predicate running the business, giving access to customers to a safe approach to the building. I understand it from aesthetic and the development of the housing development, but it doesn't make sense necessarily that it be a requirement prior to giving occupancy.
All right, one more question.
Okay.
Based on the fact that we've got an agreement before us to which there is no agreement, would you be amiable in laying this over for 2 weeks to give you and the city attorneys and the powers to be the opportunity to negotiate acceptable language to all sides, and bringing this back in 2 weeks so that we can look at an agreement to which there is some agreement?
Yes, because I'm not in agreement with said agreement.
Did you want to speak?
Yeah,
Mr. Sullivan?
but I think we've got the cart a little bit before the horse here.
Okay.
From this standpoint, we met, I shouldn't say we met, we had a public hearing on this a while back ago, and the discussion was, why don't we do a development agreement and we can restrict to what uses are gonna be in there, okay? And I think from your standpoint, if I had a development agreement that sat here and the only thing it said is the only use could be office use, you wouldn't have any objection, would that be right?
You are correct, 100%.
So the issue is, this ordinance can get passed with a development agreement. It's just a matter of what the guts are of that development agreement.
Correct.
So there's 4 or 5 issues in that development agreement
Okay.
that need to be addressed. I can't make decisions for the city. Ultimately, the decision's right here. I've given them the smorgasbord, and they can decide whether they want some of those provisions or they want to modify some of those provisions.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, I don't think as a city we want to approve B and zoning in general in that spot, generally for the reason that we're not anticipating office use is going to generate a lot of traffic, and that is clearly a traffic problem. So from this standpoint, I think there isn't any problem passing the ordinance with this amendment about a development agreement. And then we move on to the development agreement and we discuss those issues that you're bringing up now.
So we can lay over the development agreement and bring it back in 2 weeks?
I guess my difficulty is I'm not sure what you guys are gonna want and not want 2 weeks from now. So we might as well just discuss it tonight and get it done.
Patrick, I'm going to apologize. I wasn't prepared to discuss this. I don't have a copy of the development agreement. I didn't bring one with me. Do you have an extra copy?
I know what's in it, so I can give you this one, sure.
Okay.
But there's some issues that he's raised that I wouldn't mind discussing, but I don't think we're at that stage yet. I think we gotta pass the ordinance saying it's gotta be a development agreement so that you can, at a minimum, restrict the use that's gonna be in there. And then you guys can gut my development agreement all you want. It's your call, not mine.
I would prefer to have some agreement before we start passing anything.
Respect to you.
So we're still open for public hearing. Are there others that would like to speak on this item?
We're trying to make this work, but we're also trying to make some continuity and trails, some continuity in how this gets developed.
Chuck Frederick, 1511 Madison Street. We're having problem getting businesses in here. And this to me looks like we're just making it look bad to other businesses that want to come in here. All he wants to do is have a business in a different location. And I haven't found out when all this stuff that's going to happen is going to happen. It makes it sound like is it going to happen next year, 2 years, 3 years? Or when is it going to happen? If it isn't going to happen for a while, I don't think we have to worry about that. I think let the man have his business, and if nothing else, if it gets to the point where you're going to do something, if one of the choices he has is to sell the house and have it go back to a residential, then what are you going to do then? Then you still have the driveway there. So you're making it look bad for the city of Bellevue as far as I see it.
Are there others that would like to speak on this item?
My name's Kevin Mills. I'm the current owner of the property, and what I'd like to know is if he doesn't get this, and what happens to then the stuff then? Who has to pay for this bicycle trail and this road and all this stuff? I can't afford dish out $70,000 for a road and a bicycle trail on a property that, you know, I can't sell it for that much and make any money off of it. So what am I supposed to do with this property? You guys keep taking away from me. This county's already taken 2 or 3 times away from me. For Cape Art Road, for 48th Street, they took my trees out. Everybody keeps taking and taking and taking. But you never think about the consequences of the people that live there. And that to me is ridiculous. I grew up in Bellevue, and I'll tell you what, it makes me mad to stand here and listen to you people act like this. Because I don't think you care about anybody in the town but yourselves. And I'd like some questions answered. Who's gonna pay for this stuff?
Mr. Sullivan.
If the property remains in its current use, there would not be any obligation to put in the 8-foot trail. There may be a time when there would be a sidewalk improvement district where you would be required to put in a standard sidewalk, but not a 8-foot trail. Other than that, if
So are you just trying to keep him out of business then? I don't understand.
Not at all. Not at all. I'm
kind of contradictory.
First of all, as I've already said, under the development agreement, I have put in what the planning department expects to have done on that property. This council here can decide differently. So I'm missing this both from city council and participants. That contract isn't my contract, it's their contract. They can decide what they want to do with it or not do with it. So,
well, I'd like some answers, because they keep telling me you might have to put in this trail, you might have to put in this road, you might have to put in this, you might have to put on that. What am I supposed to do with this house and this property? I've lived there 27 years, and now I have to move basically because I've been inundated with houses of no fault of my own. So I don't know. I just open for suggestions, I guess. What can I do
again,
to fix this
you don't
problem?
have it. You don't have any current duty to put anything in. And at worst, that I could see occur if this transaction didn't happen, is that you would have a potential sidewalk district that would be created. And as far as I know, I don't believe we've done any sidewalk districts in 11 years that I've been here. So. I doubt that would even occur. In its current use and continuing to use it as is, I don't see you having any issues. But development is upon you, and I think at some point that intersection is going to be developed, and you will probably see, whether it be Sarpy County or the city or another SID or in combination, them coming in and condemning more of that property so that they can widen that intersection. That I can't change that. I can't stop the fact that development is happening out there, and that's a main intersection. It just is, and that is going to happen down the road. That's, to me, that's not a prediction. That's a reality that is coming toward you, and that freight train can't be stopped.
Yeah. So I just get the blunt of it then. The city, you're worried about the city, what costs they're going to have into it. What about the costs I'm going to have into it when all this stuff happens?
Well, if they come and condemn you, then they have to pay fair market value for the property, and they get you compensated. I'm trying to protect the city from paying tax dollars at or paying a lot more tax dollars down the road than what they currently would be under if the situation maintained its situation as it is now. Yeah. We have a duty not only to you, but we have a duty to the other 50,000 people in this city not to be spending the money.
Right. But I've already been through this, like I said, a couple times with the county, and they don't give you fair market value. My property taxes are $50,000 for that lot. And when they came in, they said, we figure your lot's worth $28,000. I said, how do you figure that? You're charging me $50,000 property tax on it, saying it's worth $50,000. And then they come and say, well, we don't go by that. We have our own way to figure stuff, and we say it's worth $28,000. So they base it on that instead of the $50,000 I'm paying taxes on. Now, where's the fairness in this stuff?
I
don't
understand
understand
that, but that's the county doing that. I have no control over what the county does.
Well, you got
I don't.
control of what the city does, so. And I don't even belong to the city yet. I can't even vote for any of you people. And here you're changing my whole life upside down and stuff I can't even vote for.
I don't know what to tell you on that. My only comment to you is that the planning commission and the planning department did not want to have the zoning changed at all. And we are working to try to accommodate Mr. Ricchini. And again, how that accommodation is done is for this council to decide, whether it's as the development agreement is written or as it is modified. But the difficulty is you kind of got yourself boxed in based upon a small lot sitting on a corner. And with the setbacks and everything else that they're doing with intersections, it compromises your property tremendously.
All right, so I guess I'm just stuck with whatever happens then, huh? All right, thank you.
Are there others? I'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this item. Mr. Sullivan, do you want to bring us up to speed where we are on
So
the
I
vote?
believe we had a motion by Cook to make an amendment to the ordinance that would add the development agreement. And I don't know if that got seconded.
Second by
It did.
Hanson.
Second by Hanson, so I suppose we're still in discussion if we've closed public hearing on that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Mr. Cook, did you have a question?
Well, there was talk about delaying things, and I don't know where that stands before we
Mr.
start
Shannon?
I just want to go on record and say, I don't think this is fair to bring Matt up to the podium and negotiate an agreement. Yeah, I mean, that's basically making him negotiate under the gun here. I think this whole thing just needs to be tabled. Let's have meetings and come up with a real agreement where all parties are in sync, and then bring it back to the council at that point. I don't think this is fair to Mr. Rossini to make him negotiate in public like this. I've never seen anything like this.
So how do we back out of our motions?
Withdraw them.
I mean, I can withdraw mine and then Pat can withdraw his? Or?
You can still postpone it, and the motions will still stand on the table till you hear it in 2 weeks. So that's not a problem. You could still make a motion to postpone for 2 weeks. The motions will stay on the table and be brought up in 2 weeks. But I will tell you, the city's not trying to be a villain in this process. The idea that if you have a violation, that it can be reverted back, that is the exact language that we use in our own ordinance for special use permits. If you violate your special use permit, then we can withdraw your special use permit. So there isn't anything draconian about that statement. The one about prejudice, discrimination or otherwise, that has to do with land use, and it's a requirement under federal law. That's why it's in there. It doesn't mean that if he fires somebody in his business because of some discriminatory reason has anything to do with it. It's specifically just a land use, which I would never ever see it coming up in this deal, but as a city, we're required to put that in there. We wanted to have a limitation on there with respect to land use. I think that's reasonable, and I think the applicant has approved that. So from my standpoint, the only thing that's really being objected to is the 8-foot walk trail, and perhaps that the issue of paving on the easement. So to me, there's not much left to clean up here at all. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is fit a square peg into a round hole to try to accommodate the applicant. We're not trying to not accommodate the applicant, but you also have to understand that every time we push a domino, it's going to knock down other dominoes down the road. And so we're trying to limit the exposure that the city's going to have down the road, because I'm telling you right now that at some point that property is going to be in the way of a 48th Street intersection improvement. That's going to happen. But if you want to postpone for 2 weeks, that's fine. I just don't know from a council standpoint, what you guys want to do with respect to some of these provisions. But, again, the only issues out there would be the 8-foot trail. And I guess you have to think about, if you're not going to have it done now, how's it going to get done? Because you're going to have a break in that trail. And secondly would be if you want to throw out the paving on the easement, that's fine.
But, and what I'd like to comment on is, I don't want to make a commitment that the city will pay for it or the county will pay for it. We can't sit here and say the county will pay for that easement road out if.
Well,
the
but you
driveway
can
goes away.
certainly be silent in your agreement on it, and then that,
Sure.
and that would just remove that provision.
And on the trail, I think we've had many situations come in front of the council where we want connectivity throughout the city. Why would we not want to move this forward? Now, I know Mr. Ricchini said, well, maybe delay it until the developer to the south of me has to put it in, but we're gonna have to put it, I would assume we would want to put, not at our expense, the property owner would have to put a sidewalk in. I know this is 8 foot, but that's what everybody wants. They want to be able to ride a bike and jog and walk on that trail. And we're expecting it and we're requiring it on people south of this property.
And I would comment, but I think Mr. Keeney's idea is a good idea, if he's still willing to do it, that to put it in when the developer does it, because he could just contract with his contractor and probably save significant money by doing so.
But I will still make the motion that we lay this over for 2 weeks, and that we come back when we have an agreement that's agreeable to all parties.
Do we have?
Well,
So we didn't have to approve
no,
10D.
no,
Yeah, but there was an emergency for it.
right.
Okay.
So
Clear as
we have,
mud.
do we have a motion on the table, Mr.
Are you in
Shannon?
agreement? Second?
I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Mr.
Mr. Cook, are
Manginelli?
you withdrawing your motion then?
Well, I'll have to withdraw mine and then,
I'll withdraw mine, yeah.
well, no.
All
we're
those
gonna keep
motions can stay on the table, and we'll bring them back up at the deal. And then they can do amendments and everything else to the development agreement at that time as well.
Sold.
So the motion right now is to postpone or continue this item to the 12:10 agenda.
Yes.
So we have a motion and second. Discussion? Sabrina, are you ready for a vote?
Mayor.
Mr. Preister?
As it's being prepared, I would just check with Mr. Sullivan, our attorney. I believe you said also that the coordination of the trail could be done so that it wouldn't
It
necessarily.
came up null.
However we do that, rather than have it be required and be the only section done, so that it could be done together in the future when the other development adds the trail.
Yeah, I think a simple answer to that is he wouldn't be required to put it in until such time as the development to the east. And I forget what that subdivision is called, but we could reference that.
I
Falcon
would
Point.
think that would be a good way to do it. Thank you.
Ready to vote?
We look so bad.
Can we do a roll call vote since we're laying this over? Is it up, Jim?
Yep.
Everybody vote?
Yep.
All voted yes.
Thank you.
Item 8B1 is approval of the development agreement. I assume that this will also be continued to the 12:10 meeting?
I can make that motion.
Mr. Cook?
I'll make a motion that 8B1 is moved 2 weeks from now.
Second.
Okay, the second by Mr. Modry. Discussion or questions? See none. Sabrina, are you ready for a vote? Please vote.
Is
I
it up?
saw it, but it went away. Got it.
All voted yes.
Thank you. 8C.
No, we've already done that one. We'll go to item, 8C, you're correct, Mayor. Is ordinance number 3918, the sale of city surplus property in Whispering Timbers. The title of the ordinance is an ordinance providing for the sale of certain real estate, same being described in section 1 of this ordinance, directing the conveyance of such real estate and the manner and terms thereof, and designating an effective date.
Mr. Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move to approve ordinance 3918.
Second.
Motion and a second by Mr. Thomas Burns. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Shannon?
All right. Sabrina, can you bring up page 5 of this item? Yeah. Wow. Okay, so in reading this, it was my understanding that the person that's making this purchase wanted to have the land behind his house. When I'm looking at the map, it tells me something quite different. He's getting the property behind everybody's house. So have we talked to all the other homeowners and they're okay with this guy buying the property behind their houses? I mean, where are we at with this?
City property.
We have not spoken to anybody other than the prospective buyer.
Okay, I'm not sure that that's appropriate to sell the land behind everyone else's house to one person in the area. Maybe the other people in the area want the property behind their own house. I don't know. I'm not sure we should move forward with a sale like this without talking to the property owners that are going to be adjacent to the property that we're transferring. So that didn't make any sense to me. The other thing I'll bring up is that according to the purchase agreement, they were required to get title insurance as soon as they signed the purchase agreement. And I don't see anything attached here so that we would know if there are any defects that need to be corrected on this before we'd move forward with it. So do we know
Sullivan?
if that title insurance was purchased and how it turned out?
They have not gotten title insurance. I don't know if it says that they may get title insurance. I don't believe that it requires them to get title insurance.
Sabrina, that's page 2 or 3, I believe.
Regardless, we're giving them a quit claim deed. So it says whatever interest we have, whatever large or little that may be, they get. And that's it.
Yeah, I think it was on the last one.
Paragraph 6, title insurance.
2, yeah. Is it in 6?
No, it's right there under title insurance. It says after this agreement is accepted. That agreement has not been accepted yet. Furthermore, I really don't care if they do get title insurance or not, because we are giving them a quit claim deed, so we're at no exposure by the city.
Okay.
Mr. Mangiamelli?
As far as the property to be acquired goes, this item was discussed in closed session several months ago, and this map was what was provided to the council, and the council was in agreement to dispose of the property in this manner.
Mr. Preister?
Thank you, Mayor. I go by here fairly regularly. Most of that land is unbuildable. It's a large slope to it. I don't know that anybody could do anything with it, and we have an offer to put something that's off the tax rolls on the tax rolls, to have someone take responsibility to it, and to what he wants to do is use it for wildlife for all of the neighbors. Basically, everybody maintains and gets the benefit, but he assumes the tax liability and takes care of it. If I were a neighbor, give me a wildlife habitat and somebody else take care of it. I'd love it. So we've discussed it. No problems have come up to date. And I know some of the neighbors know about it, and I think the word spreads. I can't say that they all do, but nobody else has come forward with anything. I think this is a good use of the property, and I'm prepared to support it.
And we had a public hearing on this last council meeting. Any other discussion from the council? I'll call the vote. Please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. Item number 9, ordinance for public hearing, second reading.
Item 9A is ordinance number 3919, rezoning lots 1 and 3, College Plaza Edition, replat 1, and Lot 5, College Plaza Edition from BN-PCO and BNH-PCO to BG-PCO for the purpose of commercial development. The applicant is Sharps Contracting. The general location is 1020 Lincoln Road. Let me read the title. An ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the city of Bellevue, Nebraska, as provided for by Article 3 of Ordinance Number 3619, by changing the zone classification of land located at or about 1020 Lincoln Road, more particularly described in Section 1 of the ordinance, and to provide an effective date.
Thank you. And I believe the applicant is requesting waiving the statutory 3 readings and voting on this after holding a public hearing for the meeting. I have it on my agenda, yes. And the applicant is here. I need a motion. Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor.
You just need to hold the public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance number 3919. If anyone would like to speak on this item, please do so at this time. See none, I'll close the public hearing. Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion that we waive the statutory 3 readings and voting on this item after holding a public hearing at this meeting.
A motion by Mr. Cook.
Yeah, Paul, what's the emergency?
And we don't have a second,
Well,
motion fails.
Okay. I think.
Motion fails. So the third reading will be December the 10th.
So nobody can ask.
It was the same question you gave me.
Is there further discussion?
And she asked it, and I told you.
Is it as stands? The third reading will be December the 10th. Okay. Item 10, ordinance for introduction, first reading.
Item 10A is ordinance number 3921, amending Article 7 of Chapter 28 of the Bellevue Municipal Code regarding the City of Bellevue Complete Streets Policy. The title of the ordinance is an ordinance to amend Article 7 of Chapter 28 of the Bellevue Municipal Code establishing Bellevue's Complete Streets Policy, stating guiding principles and practices so transportation improvements are planned, designed, and constructed to encourage walking, bicycling, and transit use while promoting safe and efficient operations for all users. To repeal such sections as heretofore existing, to provide for the effective date of this ordinance, and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Second reading and public hearing will be December 10th.
Item 10B is ordinance number 3922, rezoning Lot 1, Milts Edition from RS 72 to BGH for the purpose of a self-storage facility. The applicant is 2715 LLC. The general location is West Chandler Road and Cedar Island Road. The title of the ordinance is an ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the city of Bellevue, Nebraska, as provided for by Article 3 of ordinance number 3619 by changing the zone classification of land located at or about West Chandler Road and Cedar Island Road, more particularly described in section 1 of the ordinance, and to provide for an effective date.
Second reading and public hearing will also be on December the 10th.
Item 10C is ordinance number 3923, amending Article 7 sign regulations of the Bellevue zoning ordinance regarding digital signs. The applicant is the city of Bellevue. The title of the ordinance is an ordinance to amend Article 7 sign regulations, ordinance number 3619, Bellevue zoning ordinance relating to digital signs, to repeal such section as heretofore existing, to provide an effective date of the ordinance, and to provide for the publication of the ordinance in pamphlet form.
Second reading and public hearing on this will also be December 10th. Item 11, public hearing on matters other than ordinances.
Item 11A is public hearing on the event license application of Daniel Velasquez for a classic car show to be held in the Sigler Field parking lot at Hayworth Park on June 23, 2019, from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Thank you. I'll now open for public hearing on this item. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please do so at this time. I see none. I'll close the public hearing. Mr. Burns.
I move to approve the event license application of Daniel Velasquez for a classic car show to be held in the Sigler Field parking lot of Hayworth Park on June 23rd, 2019, from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m.
I have a motion by Mr. Burns. Need a second? The motion fails if we don't have a second. Motion fails. Item 12, resolutions. None. 13, current business.
Item 13A is approval and authorization for the mayor to sign task order 2018-1, scope of services and fees for professional services for sanitary sewer and street improvements right-of-way negotiation for Bellevue Go Ready project in an amount not to exceed $16,000.
It's the wishes of the council. Mr. Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move to approve item 13A.
I have a motion. A second by Mr. Shannon. Discussion and questions. Mr. Shannon.
I am confused on this item, okay? I understand that we have public funds and that we're gonna use them to get properties shovel-ready so that we can advertise, this industrial area and say, try to attract a big business to come in here for economic development and all this. Where I get confused is that we're gonna take public money to put in utilities on someone's private property so they can sell their private property for more. Now we're talking about negotiating a right-of-way. I mean, are we actually gonna pay somebody for a right-of-way when we're gonna do it to improve their property? And are they paying the city back at time of sale for all the money we're gonna sink into their property so they can sell it for more? I mean, I don't understand the theory of what we're asking someone to go negotiate, and I'd like to understand, are we saying, hey, you give us the right of way, we'll put our money in here, and when you sell it, you pay us back? Or what are we telling these private property owners? I mean, I don't understand what we're asking someone to negotiate and what kind of deal our citizens are gonna get out of this.
Mr. Sullivan.
Can we get a motion to see whether this is even gonna be an item to be
Motion.
discussed? Is there?
Yeah.
We had a motion by Preister and a second by Mr. Shannon.
All right, I missed that, sorry.
Jeff, do you want to take first crack at this?
When they put in this vac system, a lot of the laterals have to run on the east side of Cunningham Road. And so that's the property we're looking at having to acquire to put the piping in. It's not the property that we're owning and going to sell and it's also for the vacuum building. So it's gonna have to be on its own parcel on the east side of Cunningham Road also.
So the city's gonna actually own this property,
That is correct.
but not the length of the easement,
We'll own
where the building sits.
we'll own the building, we'll also own where the piping is going to go through. And there may be some construction easement too that'll revert back to the property owners just for construction. But we'll physically have that, the right-of-way and the easement that is in our control.
Okay, easements and right-of-ways are not ownership.
Yes, right-of-ways are ownership.
Right away is ownership. Easement is the ownership of the easement. You don't own the underlying ground.
But you
Okay,
own the
so which
easement,
are we going for?
which you still have control over it.
Well,
Right.
Yeah.
But why would we pay them to improve their property?
That's not improving their property, that's putting our infrastructure in.
Right, the utilities. We're bringing utilities to their property, which makes it more valuable.
No, this is on the east side of Cunningham Road. They won't be utilizing this. This VAC system is only for the city-owned property we have now. We won't service the properties on the east side. Now, in the future, if some developer did come in there, then they would be at their expense to tie into what we have. If in the future they did something.
So how much of this LB 840 area is this supporting?
This is supporting, I believe, 25 acres.
So a very tiny
I
portion.
think it's the 25 acres we're doing. Well, we're only doing one phase of that right now. In the future, as that builds out, then you'll add more onto this system.
Yeah, this is a design contract for the layout of that sanitary sewer system that will serve initially the 25 acres that is city-owned. The building that Jeff is talking about will be sized and will be able to serve other branch service lines that might be connected to it as other properties developed. The parcel that Jeff is talking about acquiring for the VAC building is probably such a size that we would leave an uneconomic remnant for the taking, specifically for the building and the sanitary sewers that would connect to it. So we're going to be asking as part of this agreement with Leo A. Daly to look at the remnant of the property to see what size is left so that we can perhaps use that land that we would acquire for wetlands mitigation so that it makes more of the entire 840 area developable and does not then require individual parcels to be wetlands mitigated. So this is a big picture here.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Questions? Mr. Sullivan?
I just comment, this is typical what's done by cities, SIDs, counties, and everything to develop infrastructure. There's not anything unusual that we're doing.
No further question? Please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you.
Item 13B is approval of an authorization for the mayor to sign an agreement and e-verify between HGM Associates, Inc. and the City of Bellevue for bridge inspections in an amount not to exceed $16,200.
Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion, we approve item 13B.
Second.
Second by Mr. Modry. Discussion, questions? See none, please vote.
All voted yes. Thank you.
Item 13C is approving the purchase of 12 new digital recording systems for the police department interview rooms from Intelligent Video Solutions in the amount of $75,147.
Mr. Preister?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move to approve item 13C as just read.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Shannon. Discussion or questions?
Discussion.
Mr. Modry?
No, go
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I just wanted to make sure everyone understood this was not the low bid on this job. It's about $43,500 higher than the low bid. However, I got some additional information, and it appears that this bidder gives us the capability that we really need for those rooms, and the low bid would fall short and is a bidder that is currently being used and we have some issues with at the current time. So, thank you.
Mr. Shannon.
Also want to note that $10,000 of the purchase is going to be paid for out of the forfeiture account, so we're not paying for the entire project.
Any other discussion, questions, or statements? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you.
Item 13D is approval of the purchase of one new breathing air compressor from Feld Fire in the amount of $36,700 to replace the old one at the fire training site.
Mr. Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve 13D as just read.
Second.
Second by Mr. Burns. Discussion or questions? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you.
Item 13E is approval of the appointment of Kathy Kimball to the Civil Service Commission to fill an unexpired term until May 2022.
Mr. Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move to approve 13E as just described.
Second.
Second by Mr. Burns. Discussion or questions? See none, please vote.
The vote is 4-2 with Mr. Shannon and Mr. Modry voting no.
Thank you. Item number 14, administration report. Are there any questions for Mr. Mangiamelli? Mr. Modry.
Thank you, Mayor. On Sabrina's report, saw that there was a meeting with Spark to discuss some of the issues we're having with this software. And in particular, you talked about requesting a different voting display. Can you talk about that a little bit?
We met with Craig Caples was able to come down to see us. Susan, myself, and planning commission member, Shirley and Tammy from the planning department, and Leland Jacobson sat in with us too. And we told him what the biggest complaint was the vote, the way the vote shows up. That's what we've heard from the get-go. And what was suggested was some kind of more of a table or a graph type thing. So it would show, like, yes votes in one column, no votes in another, abstaining in another, or absent in a fourth or something like that. And he said that was something they could do. And so hopefully we'll be seeing that in the next, soon in this next coming year.
Okay, so that would be a product update they would.
Yes, that they
come
will roll
with.
out. It's just anytime they make an update, it affects all of their users,
Right.
not just us. So that's why it takes them a while to do anything.
Sure. All right. Thank you. Another item I had was with the police department report, where they applied for a U.S. Department of Justice grant to help develop calls involving people experiencing mental health issues and help with the support of that. I think that's a tremendous thing for us. That's a big issue with mental health and those people being jailed when necessarily they may not have to be, and those kind of things. Can you comment on that a little bit, Chief?
Just to correct you, the actual grant was applied for by the county, and
that's true.
When we're partnering with them.
Right.
I'd say we just had this discussion earlier. I would say that mental health probably drives a great deal of our responses, and our call load just in general touches just about everything anymore. So every bit of money helps, and so we look forward to partnering with the county and giving up that money to do just as you said, try to alleviate some of the folks that end up maybe incarcerated in a hospital. It's not appropriate.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Mangiamelli? See none, we'll move on to item number 15, public request to be heard. Any members of the public addressing the council shall abide by council policy resolution number 35 regarding the principles of conduct and decorum, which states any statements made during the city council meeting by the mayor, members of the city council, city official and employee, or members of the general public shall not involve personal, impertinent, or slanderous attacks on individuals regardless of whether the individual so attacked is an elected official or city official or employee or member of the general public. And City Code Section 2-68 regarding the manner of addressing the council. Copies of the aforementioned rules are posted inside the council chambers. Speakers shall limit their presentation to 5 minutes.
Good evening, Chuck Frederick, 1511 Madison Street. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. I'm just going to talk off the top of my head. I don't even have any notes, but this Matt Ricchini thing should have been ironed out before you brought it up here. You know, we wasted 40 minutes, 45 minutes. You even drove the Boy Scouts out. They left during this time because they got so tired of, I think, listening to you guys up there. It's hopefully these changes will be coming up now at the next meeting, and thereafter we'll have some major changes. I think that I've talked about this many times about a lot of stuff, and mainly you don't have, at least last 8 years, I don't think you've had any transparency or accountability. I really don't. And to top it off, I hope that the next mayor and the city administrator will cut this off so we can see everybody up there. This even shows your lack of transparency right here. I mean, this, I can't believe it's gone this long without, people back there can't see all your people up there. Maybe you want to hide, I don't know, but either case, hopefully that'll be cut off. I'm not coming to the meeting next time. It's going to be a change of guard. And as you know, I've been to many meetings, been in the council 4 years. A lot of things I've talked about don't get in the minutes. I don't blame the city clerk, Sabrina, for not saying everything I say all the time. But World Herald and Bellevue Leader never print anything about what I say either. But if you look on my website, chuckfrederick.com, and just look back at what some of the things I've said, it sounds like the new elected officials are going to do some of the things I've talked about, so I'm pretty pleased about that. The other thing, though, is that a few months back, I was maybe 2, 3, 4 months ago, I indicated I wasn't going to come very often, and then the next meeting I came anyway because I still get discussed how the city's run, so I still come see if I could help make some comments to make it better. But after the meeting, one of the people in this circle right here came up to me and said, and talked to me and said, well, you said you weren't going to come to the meeting anymore. You're a liar. He turned around and walked away. I mean, that's typical people here. I think this why he would even care how often I came here. But I think that's a cowardly act. And I just hope that if I say I'm not going to come anymore and I change my mind, I'm not a liar. I just changed my mind. But I hope things go well for the new mayor, new elected officials, council people, and I hope that I admire Pat Shannon for what he's done. He's looked at these things, and if people will spend as much time on doing the homework that he does, I think that you guys do deserve a raise in. Thank you.
My name is Lauren Ward, and I'm a member of the nonprofit group Bellevue Deserves Better. The first time I spoke here...
Excuse me, Lauren, could you also state your address as well? we have, everyone states their name and address.
I've never had to do that before.
Mr.
And I honestly
Frederick.
don't feel safe doing that.
Okay?
Thank you. The first time I spoke here, I said that ignoring us or expecting us to go away would be a mistake. I believe it to be clear that we are committed to this cause and will continue to offer our presence, support, and our hard work. We are dedicated to change, and we're excited about and inspired by the election results. We will continue to be citizens organized. This is not about friendship, not about who anyone has helped or what they've achieved. Not about hate, it's not about bullying, it's not about God. It is about our community having accurate and factual information, which has been gathered and presented. From multiple mouths, it has been said that we must get our information from men, from our husbands, and what husband makes their wife speak for them. I'm not here speaking for my husband because I don't have a husband. I'm here because I want to make Bellevue better. We all know good people do bad things, and bad people do good things. We're simply asking for accountability, and we're excited for the changing of the guard.
See no others, I'll move on to item number 16, closed session. Mr. Burns.
I move that the City Council go into closed session at this time for protection of the public interest. The subject matter to be discussed in closed session shall be a federal litigation update. The following individuals will be included in closed session. Along with the mayor and city council, the following are asked to participate. City Administrator Joe Mangiamelli, City Attorney Pat Sullivan, Molly Miller, Janie Jennings, Police Chief Mark Elbert, Captain Dave Stukenholtz, and Captain Tim Melvin.
Could you add to that Tim Buckley as well?
And Tim Buckley.
You have a second by Mr. Shannon. The city council has voted to go, we need a motion and a second, and vote, please.
Did I do?
Do we get,
Pat, we need to add Jamie too.
I will.
I think she did.
And Mr. Burns did.
Did you not go?
Do we want to do a roll call vote? Thank you. The city council has voted to go into closed session at this time. The subject matter discussed in closed session will be federal litigation update. The following individuals will be included in the closed session. Along with the mayor and the city council, the following are asked to participate: City Administrator Joe Mangiamelli, City Attorney Pat Sullivan, Molly Miller, Travis Jacot, Police Chief Mark Albert, Captain Dave Stukenholtz, Captain Tim Melvin, Janie Jennings, and Tim Buckley.